Good morning, Class 4, and welcome to our English lesson. Today is Monday, the 22nd of February, and we are starting a new topic today. We are going to be looking at a folk story, and the folk story is called The King of the Fishes. So our learning objective today is I can explore a folk story. I'm going to be explaining what a folk story is later on. But before we start today's lesson, I want you to do this starter activity. It's on the worksheet on our class page on our school website. So The King of the Fishes is the folk story that we're going to be reading today, and it's a wishing tale. Now, a wish is a magical request for something that you want. So here is your first challenge. What would you ask for if you were given 3 wishes? So here it's been noted the 3 wishes. Number 1, I wish I could fly because I would love to visit a different country every week. Number 2, I wish that the rich people in the world would share their money so that no one was homeless or hungry. Number 3, I wish for a magic wardrobe, which would mean that I could create any outfit I fancied. Now, if you look at these sentences, they've told us what they're wishing for. They're wishing they could fly, that the rich people would share their money, and for a magic wardrobe. But they haven't just told us that, they've extended it. They have explained why they want that wish. And they've used conjunctions to change their simple sentences into complex sentences. And the 3 conjunctions they've used are in purple and underlined for us to see. Because, so that, and which. So I would like you to think about 3 things that you would wish for if you were given the chance to wish for anything at all, anything in the world. What would you wish for? And I want you to explain why using those 3 conjunctions. So pause the video now while you go and complete that activity, and when you have finished, come back and press play and we will carry on. So you have written down your 3 wishes. I wonder what you wished for. Please upload that to Class Dojo so I can see. So coming back to our story, the story we're going to look at today is called The King of the Fishes. And I said it was a folk story. Now, a folk story is a traditional story that has been passed down through the generations by word of mouth. So these are stories that have been told round the fire or at bedtime. It might be that grandparents have told it to their grandchildren, then those grandchildren have grown up and told it to their own grandchildren. And that's how the story gets passed through the generations. And it gets passed around the world by lots of different people. And every time the story is retold, there's a slightly different version. Some of the details might have changed slightly. Okay, so we have the same story but lots of different versions. And the version that we're going to be looking at this week is Pye Corbett's version. While you're listening to me telling you the story today, I want you to think about these questions, and we're going to be looking at these at the end of today's session. I wonder what you will like about the story. What will surprise you? And what will it remind you of? So be thinking about these as I tell you the story. The King of the Fishes. Once upon a time there was a poor fisherman called Lee. Every day he went down to the sea to fish. There he stood on the rocks and threw the nets into the icy waters and waited. When he pulled the nets in, he would take any fish back to the market and sell them. One day he caught a huge fish. It had silver scales that glittered in the sunlight, blood-red fins and a golden crown. It was so beautiful that Lee stood amazed, staring at the fish as it thrashed about in the net. Suddenly Lee felt guilty. It was so beautiful, and surely it must have a family. So he scooped it up out of the net and set it free. Lee stood watching as the fish swam out to sea. Then, to his amazement, it turned and spoke to him. Lee, you have saved the King of the Fishes. I grant you one wish. When the moon is high in the sky, come back here and tell me your heart's desire. With a flick of his fin, the King of the Fishes was gone. Immediately Lee hurried home, wondering what on earth he should wish for. There were so many things that his family needed. First he asked his elderly father, Father, if you had one wish, what would it be? There was a silence, and then his father spoke. Why, son, I would wish for new eyes. for I am blind and will never see again." Next he asked his mother, "Mother, if you had one wish, what would it be?" His mother thought for a minute and then said, "Why, son, I would wish for money, for the roof needs mending and the winter winds whip through the house and make my bones shiver so." Finally he asked his beautiful wife, "Wife, if you had one wish, what would it be?" There was a silence, then his wife whispered, "Why, Lee, I would wish for a baby, for who will care for us when we are old? Yes, nothing would be more precious than a child." Poor Lee could not make up his mind. They needed the money certainly, but his father was blind, and that was a terrible thing. However, he also knew that a child would bring joy to them all. All evening Lee paced up and down trying to decide what the wish should be. Suddenly he stopped pacing and grinned. Yes, he had it! He rushed out of the house, through the forest and down to the sea. The moon was high in the sky, and so it was time to talk to the King of the Fishes. Lee ran down onto the rocks and stood there with the foam crashing about him. He could see the moon's reflection on the waves, and then came the King of the Fishes. "What do you wish for, Lee?" called the King in a high, silvery voice. "I wish for my father to see our son in a cradle made of gold," shouted Lee. There was a silence, and the great fish disappeared. The waves stilled, and Lee could see the stars like silvery freckles in the dark night sky. Then out of the darkness he heard a noise, drifting down through the forest. It was a baby crying. So, what did you think? Did the story end as you thought it might? Remember, I asked you 3 questions before we read the story. Were you thinking about them as you listened? What did you like about the story? What surprised you? What did it remind you of? And they're the questions you're going to answer today as you explore the story, to really get you to think about what the story is about, what you think of it, if you like it, what surprised you. So really thinking about the story. So we're going to share some ideas. So number 1, I love the part when Lee chose to put the fish back in the water because it told me that he was a kind man. Look at the way they've used the word because to explain their thoughts and their opinions. Remember, when we're talking about text, we sometimes will see the evidence there in the text. The words and the phrases will tell us exactly what we need to know. Sometimes it's just clues and we put them together to find an answer. But what we must do is always explain our thinking. Why do we think that? It's not just good enough to say which part you liked, but really think about why you like it. Okay, number 2, the final wish surprised me because it was so clever. I thought it was really clever as well. Those 3 things, his dad wanted to be able to see, his mum wanted money, and his wife wanted a child. And he put all that together to ask that his father could see his child in a gold cradle. So he managed to get all those wishes together in one. That was really clever. Number 3, this story reminded me of Aladdin because they are both wishing tales. Is there any other stories it reminds you of? Okay, so they have used the word because to help them extend their ideas, and that's what you're going to do today. So that's what I'd like you to do today. You've got these 3 questions to answer. What did you like about the story? What surprised you? And what did it remind you of? So don't just put 1 or 2 words to answer it. I want you to explain. Use the word because to extend your thinking, extend your sentences to explain why you think what you do. Okay, I look forward to reading your work. Enjoy today and good luck.